What's up, everybody? We're live again, third day in a row. Feels crazy to be streaming 3 days in a row, but this is Blake&VishSports episode 21, and we got a huge guest here today. Awesome to have you. We got Akash from Niners Nation and the Shanahan podcast with Kyle Posey, one of the best podcasts around. Make sure you listen to it. What's up, Akash? How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, first of all, appreciate you guys for having me on. Vish and I, we talk a bunch about the 49ers offline. So it's cool to hop on your guys' show, watch it before. You guys are fantastic at what you do. So I'm excited to be a guest today.
Means a lot coming from you. Thank you. So let's get straight into it. The Niners have made a lot of moves over the last few days, and we've discussed them. But then one more move came in this morning, and that's the re-signing of Kaijuan Williams. I thought this was the guy that was gonna walk, but once again they made it happen. Kosh, Blake, thoughts on the 49ers re-signing nickel corner Kaijuan Williams?
I'll let Blake go.
All right. So from what I know, I don't know the most about this guy. I've only seen not the most Niners games, but I will say this, pretty solid in the nickel. And then I think the main takeaway for me is that he's just another healthy guy there that if they have injuries, you're not completely caught with your pants down having him there. And if you still want to draft a corner in the early rounds, like that's still on the table too. So first off, like flexibility just with who you got there. And then second off, he's pretty solid at the nickel. So that's still valuable, with more teams having 2-3 good receivers, especially the Rams and the Cardinals. And I mean, even the Seahawks, whoever their third receiver is going to be this year, they have lots of guys. So I like the signing for the Niners, and he's not that expensive either. So you're not breaking the bank bringing him back. But those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I just to piggyback what you said. So we don't know the contractual details yet. It's a one-year deal. I imagine it's somewhere less than $5 million, probably heavily incentivized. The 49ers have really profited off of a suppressed market at different positions. First edge, and then safety. They were able to bring back Kwaski Tart on a cheap deal, we assume. And then now with Kaijuan Williams. Williams was in the mix with Kansas City, then the Jets and the Niners. And I think he just took a one-year deal, familiar team, knows the system, is able to come back where he's comfortable. And then potentially in a year when the cap goes up, maybe he can strike one last deal where he can get a nice payday. As for the player, Williams is one of the, I would say, 3 or 4 best slot corners. PFF does its like yards per coverage snap. I think he was in the top 5 of that stat. He's great against the run. He's really tough in that area, and also an able blitzer as well. Solid did a good job the last few seasons calling those timely blitzes, where Kaijuan was able to make magic happen. So just glad to have him back. I thought that he wouldn't. I literally 10 minutes before Rap Sheet said that he was coming back. I thought he wouldn't. I thought he was going to go to Kansas City or maybe the Jets where he's from. But he's back. And like you mentioned, I think they could still draft a nickel somewhere in the mid rounds. Someone like Elijah Molden from UW, Asante Samuel Jr. from Florida State. One of those guys that can develop and potentially take over that spot in a year.
Yeah, so you guys really hit all the main points with him. Really, really good player, really solid. I wouldn't say as an individual cornerback, I just rate him extremely high in terms of his ability in man coverage, but he's just a phenomenal football player. Great tackler, sound in zone, smart. He's really physical for a guy his size. I mean, he'll take on pulling guards and take them out and stuff, which is kind of special for a guy that's 5'9", 185, 190. He's just a really tough and good football player. And so for the Niners to bring him back, especially at what we're all assuming is going to be a less than price, is, again, outstanding value for another one-year deal. And I was of the assumption that this was the guy that was gone for sure, because I thought Robert Saleh, if you notice in interviews in the past, Grant talks about it a lot with his chest thing, and he talks about the pawn is always the piece that he likes the most in chess. And I always thought Kaijuan Williams was his pawn, because he used to blitz him a lot and he used to use him in a little bit more creative ways than other players, and really highlight Kaijuan, who was a smaller undrafted player, as this kind of tough as nails top 5 to 6 slot corner in the NFL. But for whatever reason, he stayed. I think it's really good for the 49ers. And I think where Kaijuan Williams truly excels is in his ability to force fumbles. Since he's come to the 49ers in 2017, he has forced 7 fumbles, which is a pretty decent number for a nickel cornerback. I think that's really what he truly excels at on the field. I think that this is good. And then you guys both addressed the draft. I 100% think they need to draft a nickel corner, and it doesn't have to be one picked in rounds 1, 2, or 3. I think they can get away going the DJ Reed route again, round 5. Get a tough, hard-nosed football player, maybe an outside corner who just physically can't play on the outside anymore, just like DJ Reed, just too small to play outside. And he doesn't have to play year 1 because the Niners have all their starters in their secondary starting and returned, and they're going to start next year. They just need a guy who year 2, year 3, he can step in and be their future nickel corner, because if all things go right, there's no way I think the Niners can bring back Kaijuan Williams next year.
Yeah, good point.
And I was going to ask you guys this too, but if he was forced to move to the outside, would you guys be comfortable with him in that role as well? Like, say there was an injury to Verrett or an injury to the other outside corner. Could he slide over and fill that as like a Band-Aid type of role player?
Yeah, no. We saw that in the past, right? The 49ers chose to start Brian freaking Allen, this dude off the street.
Yeah.
Like, legitimately off the street. I watched him. He got toasted like route after route with Monte Parker, and the Niners wouldn't shift over to the outside. He just, like Vish mentioned, I don't think he's good as a true cover guy.
Yeah.
That's why I thought they could upgrade from Kaijuan Williams during free agency. I thought they could go get a Mike Hilton or a Desmond King or someone that's just a better like cover corner, especially in Nico Ryan's scheme. But yeah, so I don't think they'd ever move into the outside. I think they'd roll with someone else.
Yeah, that's not his game. His game isn't to be this true cover corner. His game is to be a really complete and really good football player. And he is a good player and a difference maker. The one thing I would say is you talked about how you were thinking they would upgrade. I was also comfortable actually with Kaijuan Williams. Like, Kaijuan Williams is a baller, but I was comfortable with him leaving because the Niners have shown they can replace his production. If you look at what Jamar Taylor did last year, I didn't have the highest opinion of Jamar Taylor, to be honest with you, prior to him coming in last season, but he ended up playing really well. And actually, if you look at all of their metrics, all their advanced metrics, and if you chart both of them, there's not too big of a difference in the play between Kaijuan Williams and Jamar Taylor. And Jamar Taylor was a guy they just picked up off the street, a guy nobody really wanted, and the Niners ran him through camp, and he was a good player for them last year. So I figured just like that, worst case scenario, they could bring back Jamar Taylor, they could get another guy, or they could draft a guy in the 4th or 5th round that fits this physical skill set, and he could play this smart physical style because it's not demanding on him to be this lockdown man-to-man corner in the slot the way Bryce Callahan or Marlon Humphrey or those type of guys are.
Yeah, this isn't a knock on Kaijuan Williams or even like Kwaski Tart, but the 49ers prioritized, just look at who they signed right off the bat, right? They prioritized Kyle Juszczyk, Trent Williams, Jason Verrett, and they waited on guys like Tart and Williams. They let them go take their visits or meet with other teams, whatever, and they let the market sort of determine what the price point was, and if the price was right, they were certainly willing to have them back, and it seemed to be the case for both those players. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much all there is on Kaijuan Williams. But there was another bit of big news this morning. And I know, Akash, you're so excited about this news. And it's the news that Jeremy Fowler reported that the Niners have some big plan at quarterback. And he said, watch out for the name Gardner Minshew. The Jaguars just signed C.J. Beathard, so obviously their backup quarterback spot is good to go. Blake goes to Iowa, so he knows Beathard really well. And Akash, you covered Beathard the last 3 years, so you know Beathard as well as anybody. So give me your thoughts on the 49ers possibly trading for Gardner Minshew as a backup QB. Talk to me about what you think the price would be, how you would feel about it. Talk to me about the entire thing.
I'll let Blake go again first.
All right. So I guess we can start with the price, right, and why he's probably going to get traded or maybe not stay with Jacksonville. So I think it's a foregone conclusion they're taking a quarterback at 1, and that's going to be Trevor Lawrence. And Gardner Minshew is more than a capable backup. I would probably say he's a top 3 backup quarterback in the NFL if the season started today. And I'd say he's 1 or 2, to be quite honest with you. So that's reason number 1. Number 2, he has shown to be at least somewhat competent, and like you can win games with him. Now, he was on the Jags and they didn't win many games this year, but you look at their roster and you're like, okay, you can't really pin too much on him. And he has shown guts against teams like the Colts. They went out and beat him week 1. Good shout for him, and that's awesome. And I think for what he would get traded for, I'd probably say a late 3rd or a 4th. So he was taken in the 6th round, right? 5th or 6th round, I believe. So he was taken late. And he's shown to be that he can be a backup. I would be totally cool taking a solid backup in the 3rd round. Now, the only doubt I have about him is his contract's coming up soon. How much would you be willing or comfortable paying for a backup quarterback? Would you be fine with paying maybe $8 mil, $9 mil? I mean, I guess that's a decision the Niners would have to make, but I won't go on much too longer. But yeah, I think he'd be a really solid pickup.
Yeah, so if we just talk about Gardner Minshew, the player, the backup quarterback position, he's easily an upgrade over what the 49ers had last season and what they had to roll out in Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. Whether it's just the straight counting stats, his touchdown to interception ratio, which was like 3-1 last season, his completion percentage, which was like 67, I think, or his advanced stats. If you look at any of the advanced metrics, his efficiency was better than those backup quarterbacks. So yes, in a vacuum over those guys, I would rather have Gardner Minshew. As for cost, I think, Blake, you're in the right ballpark. I would think it would cost like a 3, a 4, like somewhere in that ballpark. Mm-hmm. Something that I think the Niners would be willing to part with. I think they have 9 picks in this draft. And so they would be, I think they'd be willing to part with those mid-round picks to get a player like Gardner Minshew, who's just a solid backup. And Vish and I talked earlier today, and we think, honestly, he's probably maybe a bottom 10, bottom 15 starter, but probably good enough to be like a bridge type starting quarterback in the NFL, not just like a high-end backup. So, yes, in a vacuum, I would be comfortable with Gardner Minshew as a backup quarterback. And as for the contract, he's under contract for the next 2 seasons from just his rookie deal, and he's going to cost like $800,000 this season. I think like $900,000 next season. So super, super cheap, which is great. So you wouldn't have to necessarily worry about his deal for another 2 seasons, and with the backup positions, you would just rotate through. So I'm not really worried about that standpoint. My bigger picture takeaway on just the 49ers quarterback situation is when you worry so much about the backup quarterback, it's really just an indictment of your starting quarterback. Most contending teams, teams that have Super Bowl aspirations, don't ever talk this much about a backup quarterback. And, people in the Niners fan base, Niners Twitter, whatever, do it so much because of Jimmy Garoppolo's health, the fact that he's missed so many games, etc. And I come back to okay, if Gardner Minshew had to step in for 2-3 games, whatever, I could trust him. Kyle Shanahan could manage him, whatever. But if Gardner Minshew has to play half the season or whatever, then I wouldn't prefer that as much, right? So it all comes back to the starting quarterback, and it's this conundrum that the 49ers are in right now. And I would rather them focus on upgrading the starter and, worry less about the backup spot. But just in a vacuum, I think Minshew's better than what they had.
Yeah, so to just expand on what you guys were saying, absolutely. The difference between Minshew and CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins is massive. To me, Gardner Minshew is one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, he's probably 29, 30, 31, or 32, but I think he's one of the 32. And I'll say this, I don't think he's that much worse than Tua. I think he's a similar level player to Tua, who went 5th in the draft last year. So just in terms of value, do I think late 3rd, early 4th is bad? Absolutely not. In terms of contract, he's paid 600 something K. So that's not bad either. In terms of whether the Niners should make this move, I don't see the point here. Okay, you get Gardner Minshew, but the reason you want to have this high-level backup, which he's going to be one of the best backups in the NFL, is in the case that you're expecting your starter to miss games. Yeah. Well, if the Niners are already expecting their starter to miss games, then what's the point of having a highly paid starter if you know that you have to have this elite backup quarterback to step in? And so that's where I kind of stand. I don't understand this idea of what Gardner Minshew does to help this team. Because in an ideal situation, Jimmy Garoppolo, if he's the starter, he plays all 17 games. then you kind of just gave up a pick for insurance in Gardner Minshew. And I don't think Gardner Minshew is the kind of guy that you're ever expecting to start for you down the road. I think he'll be a Fitzmagic type guy, a guy that will come in for 7 games. He'll have this great personality with his stash. He'll catch lightning in a bottle. He'll throw for a lot of yards because he has an incredible feel for playing football. And so because of that, he'll throw for a lot of yards and everybody will love him. But the reality of it is that you have a very defined ceiling with Gardner Minshew as your quarterback. And that's why I think he'll never be given the reins of being a franchise starting quarterback. Do I think Gardner Minshew is an upgrade? Yes. Do I think Gardner Minshew is a good player? Yes. Do I understand why this is a conversation? Absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to exactly what you just said, where, yes, in a vacuum, I understand why Kyle Shanahan wants Gardner Minshew. Just if you're looking at it from a upgrading the backup position standpoint, yes, I get it, right? You're just getting a better player at that spot. But in an ideal world, like you said, Gardner Minshew never steps on the field, right? In a perfect world, Garoppolo plays 17 games. Minshew is just his fun backup, holds the clipboard every week, and that's that. But if we're just relying on history, Garoppolo's basically missed time in 2016, he went down with an injury. In 2018, went down with an injury. 2020 went down with an injury, never returned. So if we're just betting on history, likelihood is that he's going to miss time. And if you have this feeling that he's going to miss time, and we know that quarterback's the most important position in all of sports, I just think you have to insulate yourself in a safer, better way than Gardner Minshew, who you can't view as like the future, right? I just compare this to the Colin Kaepernick situation. The 49ers in the Harbaugh era had this high-end backup that they viewed as the future. And when Alex Smith went down with a concussion, boom, they inserted Kaepernick and they never looked back, right? And I would hope that the 49ers, worst case, look at this year like that type of a situation where they have this high-end rookie that they're grooming for the future. And in case something happens to Garoppolo, boom, you insert that guy. Otherwise, yeah, then we're in this constant circle where it's just Garoppolo and this backup, and God, it's exhausting.
Blake, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just did have one thought, and maybe it's a little far-fetched, but I mean, we've seen teams that have been going deep in the playoffs. Now, their starting quarterbacks have been elite, and we would not say that about Jimmy, but we've seen the Patriots draft Jimmy Garoppolo. We've seen the Packers draft Jordan Love. They drafted Aaron Rodgers when they had Favre. Now, maybe it's because those guys were top of the line, but but I guess my only thought would be, do you think maybe that they do want some bit of insurance knowing Jimmy isn't going to be there? And that's why they're looking into this. Or is it more of just like those examples would be more one-off and because the quarterback's at an elite level?
I understand I understand it. Like, I understand why they want to upgrade the backup position. I do think there's some pressure on Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch this year. I don't think pressure in terms of their job, but pressure in terms of their reputation a little bit.
Yeah.
They're looked at as as an elite GM head coach combination. They've had 3 losing seasons out of 4. Not exactly the kind of record that their reputation would dictate, right? And so I do think there is a little pressure for them to have a winning season this year. So I get why they would be aggressive in pursuit of a backup quarterback, because in the case that Jimmy Garoppolo goes down again, you want to at least try and make it to the playoffs. And if you're an above 500 team, Gardner Minshew can absolutely guide you to the playoffs if he starts 4 or 5 games. So I 100% understand their line of thinking. Where I question it is I just feel like they're missing the bigger picture, in my opinion, if they're just looking at the backup. Because when you're looking, Akash said it at the beginning, when you're looking at the backup so hard, and they've kind of voiced to you that the starter is a problem in the past, there is then a problem with the starting quarterback. And look, I'm okay with Garoppolo. I think he's a okay starting quarterback in the NFL. He's definitely a starting quarterback. But when you're an okay starting quarterback that has missed the amount of time he has, I do think there becomes a time and place, especially when you're picking 12th overall. And we're going to talk about it in a little bit. There's some special guys in this draft. And so I think both Akash and I have our own I guess, wants of what we would like the Niners to do. And I know we're on the same page with that. But with the Gardner Minshew, I understand it. I think, Akash, you definitely do too.
I absolutely do. And I see a lot of people in the comments just saying, 2019 Jimmy Garoppolo, Super Bowl, he's going to be healthy. Like, I understand, and Vish and I, we talked this morning, like a lot went into that 2019 season. If you go back and watch, they were literally 6 inches away from Seattle. I live like a mile away from CenturyLink Field. They were going to be like the 5th seed and like a wild card that year. So we look back on it now and we're like, they made it to the Super Bowl, but they easily could have been like a wild card team going to Philadelphia that year if it wasn't for like a Dre Greenlaw tackle. So a lot of things go into a football season, and we focus a lot on the results, obviously, but the process is equally as important, and the process getting to that point and the process that got them to the Super Bowl in 2019 isn't consistent, I think, in terms of it's not repeatable, I believe. That's why I think the roster they assembled, I wouldn't expect them to make the Super Bowl. I would expect them to make the playoffs, but after that, it's a crapshoot, right?
I 100% agree with that. Blake, do you think that there is a possibility that the Niners could recreate 2019 in 2021? Because I personally don't.
I don't. The defense was crazy elite, and getting a defense that's that good is really, really difficult. I don't think you can see, like, besides drafting just like bonkers, like unbelievably well and doing what the Seahawks did in the early 2010s, it's hard to make a defense that can just carry an offense. I think we see it like maybe 2 to 3 times a decade. There's those one-off teams. You think of the 2015 Broncos, those Seahawks, 2000 Ravens, where they just drag the corpse, any offense. But I don't think this Niners team is like that. It's really hard to get all the right pieces cheap and on a team together. I think it'd be a lot. Like, they'd have to just have the best draft ever, and you just can't ask that or expect that.
So two things with it. I think, one, the division is significantly better than it was in 2019. Mm-hmm. I think year 3 Kyler Murray is a better player than year 1 Kyler Murray was, and year 1 Kyler Murray gave that historic defense fits. I think that the Seahawks, they have a better defense than they did in 2019. I do think they have a better offense than they did in 2019 too, but now they have a question mark with Russell Wilson, so we will see. And the Rams obviously were a team that was kind of reloading on the fly, if you remember, in 2019. They still went 9-7, but they were good. Yeah, they were reloading that offensive line. They'd moved Marcus Peters midway. They got rid of Aqib Talib midway through the season. They got Jalen Ramsey. There were a lot of moving parts with that Rams team. And now I feel like with Matthew Stafford, they're a better team than they were in 2019 for sure. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is, I'm not sure if their offense can be the same. Like, their offense was very good in 2019 statistically. I don't know if they can run the ball the way, they ran it in 2019. I don't know if Jimmy Garoppolo, they can use him the same way they did in 2019. A lot of guys have elaborated on it. Like, Rich talks about it all the time. But the way they use, like, the thing with Garoppolo is that he was also still fresh, right? There were only 7 games of tape on Garoppolo, 8 games of tape prior to the 2019 season. Like, I don't think people realize that he was such a heavy middle of the field thrower. And now I think people really realize that if you want to really hurt Garoppolo, you just take away his first read over the middle of the field. You take away his second read, and he kind of freezes because he's unwilling to throw the football down the field and outside the numbers.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. We see eye to eye on this stuff. And yeah, just coming back to that, I think it's going to be difficult to replicate 2019. We saw that in 2020. They basically brought back the same roster. They replaced 2 guys in Sanders and Buckner. And they got hit with all the injuries and all that stuff. But even before that, it looked like they sputtered week 1. And I'm not sure if they would have been able to replicate 13-3 and a Super Bowl run. A lot goes into that. And typically it takes a franchise quarterback to be able to sustain success over years, just generally speaking. And I don't think they have that in Jimmy Garoppolo. He's going into he's got 2 years left on his deal. Like, what are you going to do in 2022? Like, are you going to pick up, are you going to extend him? It's going to be harder to draft a quarterback in what I think is going to be a worse class. They're probably going to be picking later than 12. Probably have less money than they did this season. So a lot of these moving parts, I think teams think big picture, multiple years ahead. And if the 49ers were thinking that way, they would be thinking draft a quarterback this season. Just how I view their offseason so far.
100% agree. Blake, anything to add?
No, nothing more. I think you guys definitely have that right about Minshew and 2019 replication.
So we got a quick question here from Raymond Martinez Jr. He's asking us which QBs in the draft fit Kyle Shanahan's pattern. That's the easiest way to figure out who the team takes. I can go first if you want.
Go ahead.
All right. So the thing with Kyle Shanahan's drafting pattern is we actually have little evidence or little history of really who he takes in the draft. What we do know is that the traits he really values in his quarterback is toughness and knowing where to go with the football. He talks all the time about the quarterback being decisive. I think he defines the game very simply for the quarterback. So he wants the quarterback to go with the right place to the ball. And he just wants a guy who's tough as nails. And Kirk Cousins, for him, ideally represented both those things. And you can see when he talks about those two things, which Kirk Cousins is tough as nails and Kirk Cousins knows where to go with the football, you can understand in a vacuum why he likes a guy like Kirk Cousins. Well, this year seemed to indicate that his opinion seemed to evolve, that maybe he was looking for a guy that could bail him out and go off structure a little bit more. But just talking about in terms of which quarterbacks fit Kyle Shanahan's drafting pattern, in terms of the toughness, I would say it's absolutely Justin Fields. I think he's the toughest quarterback in this draft. I think he's so willing to stand back there and take hits and deliver the ball down the field. He's tough as nails. And then in terms of knowing where to go with the football, obviously Trevor Lawrence represents both of these things, but he's there's no way
not available.
So in terms of knowing where to go with the football, the other guy I think would be Zack Wilson or Mack Jones. Those would be the two guys I would say, but Zack Wilson also seems far-fetched at this point, but Mack Jones knows where to go with the football. Justin Fields does for the most part too, though there are times he can be a little indecisive at the top of his drop. But yeah, so ideally I would say it's one of those three.
Yeah, so first let's talk about what we think Kyle Shanahan looks for in a quarterback. It's difficult because he doesn't ever tell you what it is. Like, he's not like, here's like X, Y, Z. It's not like this formula. You just put these things together and that's a Kyle Shanahan quarterback, because he's drafted differently and he's never taken a first-round quarterback since RG3, and that wasn't even really his decision. So you don't really know what he covets, especially sometimes in the late rounds. You may just take a flyer on a player, whatever. So it's always been something different. But yes, I do agree, toughness. I saw people talking about Jimmy Garoppolo not being tough. I do think that's one of his best traits. He hangs in the pocket and takes a lot of hits. Does get hurt, but I think he's really tough. And Kirk Cousins, again, same thing. And then the second thing I'd say is like accuracy / knowing where to go with the ball. Pre-snap, I think Kyle Shanahan does a really good job of setting up different reads at different levels of the field. And based on what the defense gives you pre-snap, you determine, what look you like as a quarterback. And so I've watched the top 5 quarterbacks. And if, the 3 guys that I particularly really like, Justin Fields, Mack Jones, and Zack Wilson, in that order, I'd say. Justin Fields is probably the most unnatural fit because the offense was really different at Ohio State. They run a ton of RPO, and it's different than what the 49ers run right now. So that's probably the most unnatural fit, but I think
it's the most college offense of those 3 guys.
Yep, agreed. It's the not pro style offense. You're right. But I think Justin Fields has the highest ceiling of those 3 guys. Just given his physical tools, his size, his strength, his arm, and the plays he was able to make behind an Ohio State offensive line and with Ryan Day, who somehow I came out of watching Justin Fields and my opinion of Ryan Day lessened as a coach, at least, or as an offensive schemer. Then Zack Wilson, who, I don't know, feels a little overhyped right now. Maybe it's just like the draft machine. A lot of the time it feels like he's playing 7-on-7 because his offensive line's really good. And he made a lot of 50-50 throws where his receiver made plays. And you don't know how that translates in the NFL. And a lot of people see Mahomes, Rodgers, and those guys have the arm talent to pull that off, but it's not very common. And sometimes he struggles to read the field, I think. And he really only had 1 good season. So I'd be hesitant from that standpoint. And then Mack Jones. And I know a lot of people dislike this because you see slow, immobile quarterback, this pudgy guy. But Mack Jones in his 1 season at Alabama, operated the hell out of that offense. His tape was probably the cleanest out of the 3 guys. By far, yeah. I think he only threw 4 picks, and a couple of those might have been tipped. So I was really impressed with Mack Jones. Tough as nails, really good deep ball. The hardest part of his evaluation is he played on an all-star team. So it's okay, how much is Mack Jones contributing to this? But you still have to make the throws, make the reads. Mm-hmm. hang in the pocket, all that kind of stuff. So I was really impressed with him. His ceiling to me feels a little lower. Like he feels like KP said, my podcast host, he said that he looks kind of like Jake Delhomme, the Panthers quarterback. He feels like Kirk Cousins to me with a better deep ball.
I see Andy Dalton.
Yeah. And so typically those players go not in the first round, but it feels like Mack Jones is going to go in the top 15. So I'd be a little hesitant from that standpoint. But those would be the three names instantly that I think are Kyle Shanahan quarterbacks. I'm not a fan of some of the later round names that are tossed around, the Davis Mills, the Kellen Mond, the Kyle Trask, those guys. I would stay the hell away from those guys. Those three for my money.
Blake?
I got one guy. He's the guy I've mainly scouted the most or just like watched tape of, and I think he's going to be special basically, and that's Zack Wilson. So he has been in just like the general like media and buzz. His stock has flew up a ton, obviously this year, because I mean, going into the season, BYU kind of had like an open quarterback competition. They weren't sure if he was going to be the starter completely. He won that, and like you said, Akash, his best year has been this year. He did not look like this last year, but this year he was special. A couple reasons why I like him the most. You see the quick release that he has. I think that'd be great for the Niners system just in general with quick stuff. And then one thing that I think would be added more is maybe like more stuff to the receiver out of the backfield. I know you see with guys that have strong arms and quick releases, they can get it out faster. So it's almost like another extension of the run game. Shanahan loves doing stuff like that with Debo. So maybe they put Debo on the backfield and do things along those lines. I'm not too sure. And then the other thing I like about him is outside the pocket, he just makes plays, whether that's throwing like off his base. Like he can do that. Yeah. Like, and I value that a lot. And then obviously the arm angles are just like sweet to watch. He kind of looks like he's throwing a baseball at times. And those are things that you just like can't teach. You really can't. So that's what I like about him. Main issues like durability. And he has had a couple surgeries on his shoulders, I believe. And I don't think the Niners fans want to go through with another quarterback that's injury prone because that would just be torture. But I do like Wilson a lot. I think he'd fit the scheme really, really well, to be honest with you guys. But will he be there? Because he looks like he's going 2 to the Jets. And I don't know if they'd trade a lot for the torture they've endured at quarterback over the last decade, I'd want to say. Probably maybe even longer. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So go ahead. My bad.
I was just going to say, so you're right on Zack Wilson in terms of the pure fit, right? Because when you watch BYU's offense, they run a ton of outside zone. They run play action off of it. They run a lot of the same concepts that Kyle Shanahan does. So you're like, I see the stuff that the 49ers run, and I see Zack Wilson run it. So in theory, he could fit very well. So that part I do agree with. And yeah, he's going to have his pro day on Friday. He's listed at 6'3", 210. Yeah, I bet he's like 6 foot 190.
Yeah.
He's not 6'3". Justin Fields is like 6'3", 230. Zack Wilson is like 6 foot. At least that's what he looks like on tape when you watch him. Mm-hmm. So the size thing is a concern. It's a good point. He feels more like a Baker Mayfield type height than like Justin Fields type size.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And so that's going to segue us perfectly to our next topic. Before I get there, this is the Niners GOAT fan right here. Mariah is the best. If you don't know Mariah, you've got to know Mariah. She is the nicest person out there. And so let's get into this next topic because, Akash, this is what you're here for. I know you have strong feelings about this, but I also know that you're going to say Blake go first on this topic. So I'm going to say Blake go first on this topic. Should the 49ers trade up for a quarterback?
I think with the signings that they've made, I think they should. I know we talked about this with Jason, but a lot of these deals are one-year deals, and that could be because of the market. But some of the guys they've brought back are a little older, and that's kind of saying like, hey, we're on, we're hurrying it up here. We're trying to go all in right now. I think that's what they were trying to say with Mack and Williams, and then they have a ton of other one-year deals with, I believe Williams, and then probably Tart as well, or at least they're shorter. So they're not like a super, super young team. They have a ton of veterans. And to me, that screams, okay, we don't think Jimmy is good enough, but we can get a guy early not have to pay him much because they have a lot of guys that are expensive, and I mean, they're really good players, so obviously they're going to cost a lot of money when their contracts are up. So I think they should trade up for a quarterback. And you mentioned this earlier, Akash. If you want sustained success, typically having a really good quarterback is the best way to do it. And then the last point I want to make is the Niners aren't going to be drafting 12 again. They're not going to be this high in the draft. This is a really, really good roster. We've talked about it with the Dolphins too. They're not going to be at 3. The Niners aren't going to be at 12. If you have the chance to get a star quarterback and you're in without giving up too crazy much, like trading a bunch of first, which I don't think they would have to do, they should do it. The Niners should trade up for a quarterback in the 2021 NFL draft.
Kosh?
Yeah. All right. I've been thinking about this for weeks. I've been watching all the quarterbacks, obviously, and then you wait for free agency to happen to look at what the needs are, and then you figure out what your draft plan is. So coming into free agency, the Niners had a ton of needs. They had, I think, like one dude signed in the secondary. They had a need, at center, just because they had a rotating door there. Their edge rushers looked kind of thin. And, you were like, oh, my God, they've got all these needs to address. The cap's coming down. Like, what are they going to do? Next thing you know, in free agency, their secondary seems filled out. They seem like they got their 2 starting outside corners. They got Kaijuan Williams in the slot. They got Tart and Ward as their starting safeties, and they've got Tarvarius Moore as depth. On the defensive line, they've signed a few guys on the interior that I think will be upgrades. They've got Ebukam, obviously, on the outside in their turbo package. D Ford looks like he's back in the facility running. I don't know what to expect from him, but it's found money if he plays well. And then they sign Alex Mack. They re-sign Trent Williams. Next thing you know, you're like, they don't have a clear need in the first round. Mm-hmm. They can go best player available in a year where, if you had a quarterback that you really believed in, then you can go BPA at 12. You can trade back. You have a bunch of different options. But then you start thinking, you're like, okay, you've got a quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo that has missed, I think, like nearly 50% of his games. And even when he does play, he's, a middling quarterback, starting quarterback, of course. You can win with him. He's efficient, all that stuff, but he's middling. Let's just keep it a buck. And I want Kyle Shanahan to find someone that he truly believes in, someone that can transcend his offense, and someone that can bail him out, like he alluded to after the Bills game, after they played Josh Allen. So then you start thinking, okay, they're picking at number 12 in a really good quarterback class. They probably only need to trade up somewhere between picks 5 and 7, I think, to be able to go get their guy. And their guy I would assume is one of Justin Fields or Trey Lance or Mack Jones, because I think Wilson and Lawrence are going to be gone. So then you just go through all these scenarios and you're like, okay, they could really benefit from having a rookie contract at quarterback. They can, load up the roster. I think typically we see teams having success is when they have quarterbacks with a rookie contract who play well. They can really load up the roster and benefit from that. And just given all those things, I've been just pounding the drum for this, that they should trade up, be aggressive, swing for the fences. They're in a division with Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, and Kyler Murray. They've got the 4th most talented quarterback, but arguably the best coach. I think they should just take a swing, be aggressive, and go get your guy. That's just my theory.
I 100% agree with both of you. So a week ago, if you had asked me this question, I'd have said, hell no. There were too many holes on this roster, but somehow the Niners did a phenomenal job of being able to bring everybody back. And look, I'm not someone that's always about, hey, run it back, bring the same team back, because I think that when something doesn't work, it's not worth trying it again because it's not going to work again. Mm-hmm. But in this case, the Niners' best possible options, like in interior defensive line, DJ Jones was the best possible option, and bringing him back was massive. Jason Verrett and Tart, to me, were their 2 best options in terms of at corner and at safety. Bringing them back was essential. And just like that, I just think that what the Niners were able to do is that they were able to bring back 20. They have 21 confirmed starters, basically. And that's including the quarterback. I think right guard's their only position of flux, and they have a giant training camp battle for that between Colton McKivitz, Daniel Brunskill, and I'm thinking possibly another draft pick in the 4th or 5th round. So they have 21 confirmed starters coming back, and they also have depth. And so this is the year for them. 12, like you said, 12-7, 12-6, 12-5 is not that bad. I think we all assume Lawrence going 1. Wilson's going too. I have a feeling Miami will go Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, whoever they prefer at receiver. And then from all accounts, it seems Atlanta's going to go Trey Lance at 4. Maybe they're not. Who knows? But that's kind of where it is. So Justin Fields, Mack Jones, and it's only them versus Carolina to get up to 5 through 7. I think this is the year to go make it happen. And another part of it is something we talked about offline before the show, actually, and it was we were talking about the Fred Warner contract and how they were going to make it happen, all of that. By resetting their timetable, by getting a rookie quarterback, what they're going to do is that they're going to use the rookie wage scale, and now maybe Jason Verrett isn't gone if he balls out this year, because that rookie wage scale, when you have that quarterback making $5 to $10 million, it changes the kind of money you can play with. It changes the kind of players you can have around the quarterback. The Niners will be able to retain a lot more talent. So the way I feel about it, and also if they trade up for a quarterback, I'm 100% in on the Gardner Minshew move, because then I think that's where Gardner Minshew fits perfectly, of having this highly paid, very good backup behind your young starter. And he's not going to be highly paid next year, so the Niners would be paying biscuits for their quarterback position, but I'm talking about eventually down the road. I just think it makes too much sense. It's the most prudent move for them to make. Now, I'm not sure it'll be the one they end up making, but from all the moves they've made, by having 21 of 22 starters basically confirmed, 20 if you want to say Jimmy Garoppolo is a state of flux, then it just makes too much sense. Go up, get the quarterback, whoever Kyle Shanahan wants, get him. There's never too much to give up to go get a quarterback. I hate when people say, I'll do it for 1-1s, but 2-1s is not worth. But then you'll see them out talk on the other side of their mouth and say, you do whatever you can to go get your quarterback. It's really one or the other. You do whatever you can to get your quarterback. That philosophy is real, and it's time for Kyle Shanahan to go get his quarterback.
I agree. And historically, under the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch group, in the first round, at least the top half of the first round, they've only gone defensive line or offensive line, right? Solomon Thomas, Nick Bosa, Mike McGlinchey. These are the names you think, Javon Kinlaw. But you look at, Ayuk, but Ayuk was at like 25, right? I'm just talking like in the top half of the first round where they're picking this year. And you look at the defensive line depth, they're pretty deep right now. So I don't know where a first-round rookie, if you were to take a player, would like slot in. Or they've taken offensive line. But right now, like you mentioned, only position of flex is right guard. And I don't think Kyle Shanahan values the guard position as much. He values center and tackles. And we think they're set at those spots. Could they draft a Slater and move McGlinchey? Maybe. But McGlinchey's, like someone said in the comments, a really good run blocker. He is. He's an average pass blocker. He's better than he gets credit for online, I think. And I think they just pick up his fifth-year option, which is only like $10.5 million, and they just roll with that. So you start knocking off these needs, and you're like, just go get a quarterback. You've got this good roster, and you just see where the chips fall from there.
I did have one thing. Oh, you can go.
Yeah. Go. No, jump in.
I was just going to say, so Akash mentioned that teams can like load up their roster. And just a couple examples of that over the years. Look what the Ravens have done with Lamar. Look at all the guys they've acquired through trades. This past year, they got Calais Campbell, Yannick Ngakoue. They went and got Earl Thomas. They went all in. The Cardinals, they said, okay, we need a better receiver. Larry Fitzgerald is like 80 years old. All right, DeAndre Hopkins, they just got J.J. Watt. They've made trades or other moves to get like high talented people. You've seen this time and time again, and it's definitely a winning recipe. Me and Vish have brought this up before, but like I think it's 12% or 13%. Like no quarterbacks getting paid more than that is one. And obviously it's not just like a binary thing like, oh, if your quarterback's more than 14%, like you're going to lose. No, obviously not. But I think it does show like the teams that have won the Super Bowl in the last 10 years, they've either had Tom Brady, who's paid less than he should, or they've had a quarterback on a rookie deal.
Yeah.
So I really think it makes too much sense speaking about it, but
the ultimate variable is you don't know who Kyle Shanahan likes.
Yeah.
So he could just fall in love with some random quarterback that you haven't watched, like a CJ Beathard in 2017, when all of us were like, get Watson, and he ended up really like Beathard. So you never know. That's a wild card, but it's the smart move. I think just take a quarterback. Just take one.
I don't think he'll risk it this year. If there's a guy, I think he'll make sure he's doing his due diligence. He'll make sure he looks at everybody, and he'll make sure he knows exactly what's going on. I think that it just makes too much sense. You guys have really mentioned why. There feels like there's no reason why this isn't the year they should do it. You're picking 12, all of that, but hey, sometimes things make too much sense and NFL teams just don't make that move. So we'll see what happens. I personally, this is the route I would like them to go.
I do have one more thought, Vish, before you hop off. And it's kind of, I think the reason why it's not, maybe it hasn't been done yet. And I think one, they're waiting for draft day to do it. And then number two, if this quarterback turns out to be not good, like I would be very surprised if Lynch or Kyle, one of them was not gone. Like this could potentially get them fired. And, you know, it's nice for us to sit here not having to worry about the stress of running the Niners and all that. But it's definitely something that needs to be taken into account, because if they go and say they get Trey Lance and he ends up being horrible, like they might not be coaching anymore. No matter how good Kyle Shanahan has a scheme, like if he
might have to go to the next team.
Yeah. And that, I think that's seriously something that, like, I think that's one of the definitely the biggest reasons why they haven't done it, and something we should think about or discuss more.
No, I think it's very real. And you know what? I'm not even saying move off of Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, you can trade up, get your guy. Now, financially, it's not the most prudent for next year, but the roster is basically set for next year. Like we said, 21 of 22 starters are set. So that means really that realistically, they could easily start Garoppolo next year and have a highly talented rookie quarterback behind him. And maybe the rookie doesn't play next year and Garoppolo plays great. You go to the playoffs, you cut Garoppolo and start the rookie next year, or trade Garoppolo because his value will be great. Or maybe Garoppolo gets hurt and the rookie's ready to go and all of that. There's so much flexibility the rookie offers. And in terms of financial flexibility, it would be a great amount of financial flexibility for not this year, because this year's set in stone for 2022, 2023, and 2024.
Yeah, and honestly, we talk about Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch like they are proven winners. And they had the one season, 13-3 Super Bowl, all that stuff. But if you just compare them to Sean McVay, Les Snead, who are their contemporary counterparts, came in at the same time, division rival, same type of quarterback, different rosters, I get it. But Sean McVay and Les Snead have been kicking ass now for 4 seasons, made the playoffs, 3 times, right?
3 out of 4 winning records.
4 years, 4 winning seasons, 1 Super Bowl appearance, just like the Niners. So Kyle Shanahan's had 3 losing seasons. 2 of the years I would attribute it to not having the quarterback, right? Quarterback getting hurt. So we just give them the excuse. But you can't go back into 2021 knowing what we know now about Garoppolo and say he gets hurt and you have to roll out a backup, not a rookie, a backup. I'm not going to feel right. I'm not going to sit here and be like, we'll be the excuse. Like, you have the opportunity now to insulate yourself with a future quarterback. Just go do it. And there's a chance that person doesn't pan out, but I'll at least appreciate you for being aggressive versus just being kind of timid and always hedging your bet.
I 100% agree. So we got one more topic to get to, but we also got a couple questions. So let's hit on those real quick, and then let's finish off with our final topic. First, some mock drafts have Trey Lance falling to 12. Any opinions on him based on his pro day?
Trey Lance. So watching Trey Lance, he also is a fit in the Kyle Shanahan offense in terms of North Dakota State runs a pro style offense. So you see a lot of the same concepts. I tweeted out a clip he ran leak, which is a popular Kyle Shanahan concept. But the physical tools are there. But I don't know, his limited reps, his 1 season of play in the FCS, all that stuff just kind of worries me. I also think he's not a very anticipatory thrower. He throws a lot, like he doesn't throw people open. He waits till they're open to throw. A lot of that stuff reminds me of Garoppolo. And I would be wary of taking that type of a player like in the top 12. He reminds me a lot of Jordan Love coming out of Utah State, maybe a little better, but Jordan Love went 31, something like that. So
but still,
if you're talking Lance as like the Niners trade back up from 43 into the first round to get Trey Lance, okay, I'd understand that a little more, but like trading up into the top 10 to get more of a project, I would be a little hesitant with that. Especially with what Blake said in terms of job security and things like that, I would go for more of a sure thing.
Blake?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, he has the physical tools. The dude's built like a running back. He has a cannon of an arm. But he just doesn't seem like a guy that makes the sense for the Niners timeline. Like, just unless they just he doesn't look like a guy who can start day one. He's played 13 games in college where he looked like clearly the best athlete. And one thing that just worries me a lot is like when a lot of his big plays are just like him running and like stiff arming middle linebackers from the FCS. I think is that going to really translate that much? I don't know. Like he's an insane athlete, don't get me wrong, but how good he is against the FCS isn't always like the best predictor of how he'll be in the NFL based on his play style, which is my biggest concern. And then the timeline issue too, like he definitely is a project. Like if you threw him in day one and like he doesn't pan out, I think a lot of people would expect that. But yeah, I just don't think he's there for the Niners. And I didn't watch his pro day, so I can't say that. I'm just basing it off of like what I've seen from him in actual games.
Yeah, I don't care for his pro day. I don't know. I'm not the most informed when it comes to quarterback mechanics. So a pro day is not useful for me because I haven't really gotten into learning that stuff. For me, if the guy looks aligned, then it's good enough for me. If it's translatable and he looks aligned when he's throwing the ball. So like the easy ones to say they're not is if you remember Sam Darnold coming out of USC was just a mechanical mess. His feet would go that way and his arm would go that way and he would throw the ball. Like those are easy to see. But for the most part, I don't have the depth of knowledge on the different nuances of that. What I can say is that this guy scares the hell out of me. He's the one guy I don't really want the Niners to take because I think he's such a wild card. There's a giant range of possibilities of what he could turn out to be, and I don't want to be the Niners to be the team playing with that kind of fire. Because one, I think the Josh Allen comparison's a little rich. He's physically extremely talented. He is not as talented as Josh Allen. Josh Allen is one of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen. That's an important distinction to make. And two, it's just the lack of reps, a lot of his throws are schemed where you throw it to one guy. I mean, that's how Niners plays are. But if you look at Leak is really a play designed to throw to a singular target, and it's play action, drop back and throw to that target. He doesn't have a lot of throws in his career too. Like Mack Jones has the same amount of starts as him, but Mack Jones has, I think, at least 1.5 times the number of throws. Yeah, it's close to double, so that's important. Honestly, I don't care if he falls to 12 because I wouldn't take him at 12. He's scared. He's a guy that just I think I would prefer if the Niners stayed away from because I think there is a scenario that Trey Lance is a super duper superstar in the NFL, but I think there's also a scenario where he's just never ready for the speed of the game and ready to play. And so for that reason, I just don't want to be the person taking that risk or the Niners to be the person taking that risk.
Yeah, the Josh Allen comp is a little wild to me because if you watch Josh Allen, like his Wyoming tape, and maybe you and I talked about this, he played in a lot of games where the weather was crappy, where it felt like his team sucked, where it felt like he was really elevating guys, and you could see some potential. Whereas Trey Lance, obviously, you see the potential, but you don't see those other factors that you take into consideration when, like with Allen. So that comp is a little rich for me, like you mentioned too. I don't think he's ceiling high.
I agree. So now we got another question from Francisco, and he says every rumor is calculated, so I think this Minshew thing is just a distraction and a surprise is coming.
Yeah, I mean, I agree and I disagree. So the 49ers they're run like an economic exercise. I say this all the time, which kind of scares me because sometimes you need to just be aggressive and just go get what you need to get and forget what like the chart says. But a lot of the times they're run like a chart where they will be in on just about every type player. They will make a call. They'll figure out what the value is. They'll assess what they have, figure out if it's like an improvement, and they'll decide if they want to make the move or not. Same thing like with Joe Flacco or Andy Dalton or Mitch Trubisky or Sam Darnold or Matt Stafford, even that trade, and now Gardner Minshew. Same thing, right? They're always going to be interested, and there's always going to be rumors that, the 49ers made a call or they are interested. And I believe it, they are. But the level of interest is kind of unknown. We don't know that that's the stuff that goes on behind closed doors. And so to say like it's a distraction or anything, I don't completely agree. I bet they called and they tried to figure out what his value was. And it's just another path that they could potentially take for quarterback.
Blake?
Yeah. I mean, NFL, that's I really didn't know that, Akash. That's an interesting perspective on everything. But here's what I'll say on this. If you remember the 2018 draft, the Browns had the number 1 pick. How many mock drafts or rumors or thoughts did you ever hear about them wanting to go Baker Mayfield first overall? I think the first one I heard was the week of the draft or maybe even a couple days prior. Teams don't really like to leak their plans, I feel, in a sense that you'll never hear a team say we're super, super in on this guy. And it's just something that would be out of the blue to a typical thought. So I think in that sense, there's so much smoke and mirrors going on. It's really tough to tell exactly what they're thinking. And maybe they do just want to know what Minshew's valued at by the Jaguars, because maybe they value him for a 2nd-round pick, and then the Niners just hung up the phone. Or maybe they're yeah, we don't really want him anymore, and he'd be a lot cheaper, and they'd be more interested in that sense. So,
yeah, I think both of you nailed it. I think that it's just they try and make these calls. I think I don't want to question the reporting. I think all these reporters do a phenomenal job, and I think they are right with their news. I think the question is, are the Niners willing to plunge on any of these guys? And for the most part, if you look at Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, I mean, fans hate it, but they're always willing to do their diligence. And they do their diligence on every single player by making calls, finding out the value, finding out the price, understanding if that player can help their team. But ultimately, I think plunging and finding out someone's value and being interested are two different things. I think for them to truly plunge and push their chips to the table, it has to be a guy that Kyle Shanahan just loves.
Yeah, and then the other thing, I heard someone else say this, and I totally agree. Now is the time when teams do, favors for agents and things like that. And just with Kyle Shanahan, how smart he is offensively, it's pretty easy if you're Joe Flacco's agent, for instance, or Gardner Minshew's agent, to be hey, the Niners are interested. And now all of a sudden there's a market for your client because teams are oh, Kyle's interested. Okay, maybe we should be. So there's that aspect of it too. And so is something going to happen? I don't know. I would bet against it, but have the Niners probably called and done some due diligence? I would think that. Yeah. So
100%. And then finally, Jamal basically says, why would the 49ers not take a QB? All three of us are all with you, Jamal. And I know a lot of you guys have asked a lot of questions in the comments. We have one more topic, and if Akash still has some time, we'll get it to a lot of them. It just depends on his time. We got to be respectful of that. He's kind of a big deal, guys. This is Niners Nation. Akash, he's host of the Shannon Plan podcast with Kyle Posey. Make sure you follow all of this stuff. So let's get to our final topic. And we've kind of been talking about this throughout the show, but we haven't touched on it. And so what I think we've all agreed with is that between the three of us, we like Justin Fields, Zack Wilson, and Mack Jones. I think those are our three quarterbacks that we like after Trevor Lawrence. I know I feel that way. I would rank them Fields, Wilson kind of in the same tier, and then Jones. I think Akash, you go Fields, Jones, Wilson. And then Blake, I know you have Wilson first.
Yeah, I got Wilson.
I don't know how you rank Fields and Jones yet, but so let's get into this. Let's say the Niners are in a scenario where they can trade up, and let's say this Jets stick with Sam Darnold. Who would be the better scheme fit for the 49ers, Justin Fields or Zack Wilson?
You can go first on this one, Akash.
Just schematically, if I was just to take player X and just plug them right into Kyle Shanahan, I would say Zack Wilson, just because he ran the concepts at BYU that I see Kyle Shanahan run with Jimmy Garoppolo and his other quarterbacks. The fit is just seamless. They run wide zone, they run stuff off of play action, they run flood, and just some basic concepts that you see Kyle Shanahan run. So that's why when I see it, I'm okay, I can see the fit. But if you just remove the fit part of it and you look at ceiling, then you look at the other things that the quarterback brings to the table, that's where I lean Justin Fields, where I think Fields, while the fit may not be seamless and Kyle Shanahan may have to do a little bit of tinkering with his offense to try to, get Justin Fields more comfortable, I like that just aspect better, just because I think Fields is talent, raw talent. His physical abilities are greater than Zack Wilson. He's, had more tape on display. Now he's had 2 seasons in the Big Ten. And I just like Justin Fields better. I don't know. It's hard to describe when you just watch these two guys back to back in these games. And I watched like 6 Justin Fields games. I just like Fields better as a player. And honestly, I like Mack Jones better there, even though the ceiling not be as high as Wilson's. But if you were Fields or Wilson, gun to my head, I'd go Justin Fields.
Blake, I think I know who you're going to say, but let's hear why.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on it a little bit already with Wilson. I think his play. I know we've talked about this, Vish, but the Niners have kind of had some statues back there, not as athletic. Having either Fields or Wilson would actually just be a treat to watch in a Shanahan system, with being able to get them out of the pocket more. And I think Wilson outside of the pocket is probably more dangerous. Just his throws on the run are just, I mean, I don't know, man. They're insane to me. Like, I hate to bring up like the Mahomes and Rodgers things, but there is like that sort of element of magic that when he gets out of the pocket, you just don't know what's going to happen. That I really do like a lot. Now, I don't think he'll be as good as those guys. Like, no chance. Those guys are just insane, but he has that outside of the pocket ability that his eyes are always down the field and he's looking, okay, like, I'm going to get this 50-yard bomb. And he's not looking to scramble first.
I do.
Oh, gosh. But yeah, I don't know, man. Wilson, I think he'd be just really, really good. But again, getting him would be tough.
I will say Wilson has the more highlight-worthy plays. So if I would give you a highlight reel of Zack Wilson and Justin Fields, Zack Wilson would have like the better highlight reel because he just has these crazy off-platform plays where he's like arm angles are funky and he jacks Milne like down the sideline like 45 yards, like especially like against Boise State, he had some crazy plays on that grass. And Justin Fields is more, of a true pocket quarterback. It feels like weird to say. Because he's mobile. I think he's going to run like a 4.3, 4.4, but he tends to sit in the pocket longer than you'd like sometimes because he's working through his progression. He's waiting for something to open up. But he's also capable of extending plays. So you see less of the off-platform, off-schedule stuff from Fields. But I think just what he does from the pocket is more consistent and his process is better than Wilson's, I would say. That's why.
Before you go, Vish, I did want to say, like, Fields is insane out of the pocket too. Like, if he gets going downhill, this dude's like, dare I say, Cam Newton-like.
Right.
He's probably faster, maybe not as big, and maybe not going to run over people as much, but he can make plays out of the pocket. And he is, like you guys mentioned, like just super tough. We saw those injuries he had. I think it was the championship game, and he looked like he was in serious pain. I mean, he got hit pretty hard in the ribs on the side of his body, and he came back in, still, finished the game. He's tough.
Yeah, so I think they both fit schematically, but I think they both fit in different versions of the Shanahan offense. And so there's a lot of iterations of it now in the NFL. I think like 10 or 12 are running the scheme. So I think Zack Wilson fits in the Packers kind of world of the Shanahan offense, what Aaron Rodgers is doing, a lot of pre-snap alerts. Zack Wilson had a lot of alerts at BYU where pre-snap he could pick a side he was going to go to with the football. He was really good at it actually pre-snap. You didn't see as much post-snap maybe reads based on rotations and stuff, but you saw a really good pre-snap process that allowed him to choose matchup based where he wanted to go with the ball. A lot of RPOs, a lot of stuff in the quick game because he's got a really, really quick release. It's lightning, and he gets it out there fast with a lot of pace from any platform. So I think he fits from that standpoint. I don't think Justin Fields is a particular fit for that offense. He has a little longer delivery. He's got a little slower release. But I think where Justin Fields fits is kind of in the Tennessee version of the offense where it's run, play action, throw the ball down the field. And it's not short. You're looking to push the ball down the field. I think Justin Fields is the most accurate down the field thrower in this draft. I think he's very tough and he's willing to stand in the pocket. And he's got a little Ryan Tannehill meets Cam Newton meets Russell Wilson to his game. And I think that his motion is reminiscent of Wilson and his deep ball. His play style is kind of Tannehill-esque, and his body and running ability is Cam Newton. So I think the offense would be like where you have the RG3 run game stuff, but the offense in reality is 21 personnel, 12 personnel, 11 personnel, run, play action, and you're looking to push the ball down the field, and it's a lot of 2-man routes, a lot of 3-man routes, and Justin Fields is just ripping crossers, ripping deep posts, ripping 9 routes, and I think that's where they would both fit. Gun to my head, who I think would be the better fit for the 49ers, it would be Justin Fields. And that's because I think Justin Fields, if I talked about it, right, 12 personnel, 21 personnel, Niners just signed Kyle Juszczyk. If you're looking to sign Kyle Juszczyk, that means you're going to be a run-first offense first. And that means you got to go run game, play action, and throw the ball down the field. And that's where I think Justin Fields is the better fit of the two. Though I think both would be great fits. I love both as prospects. I would be ecstatic with both. But, yeah, that's where I stand.
Yeah, no, agreed. I wouldn't complain with either, but at the highest level, when we're at the spot, we're going to nitpick every little thing when it comes to these two guys. And, yeah, I think you're right. When it comes to Fields, his accuracy, I think Derek Clausen charted it. And I think he was the most accurate quarterback, that he's charted since 2016. Yeah, he feels like a more accurate Cam Newton to me. I mean, not the same size, obviously. I think Newton's like 6'5", this guy's like 6'3". But that's what I think of when I watch him play. And I think in most drafts, he'd probably be number 1, number 2. But this is just such a good quarterback class. He's being nitpicked, especially because of those few games in 2020 where his stats didn't look particularly good. But I went back and watched those, the Northwestern, Indiana games specifically, and he wasn't particularly bad. I mean, he had some bad plays for sure, but his offensive line didn't protect particularly well. I thought Ryan Day wasn't really helping him out. And, it is what it is. But I would be ecstatic with either one of these guys.
Yeah, I didn't think the Northwestern game was particularly that bad. I think Ohio State has very rarely seen split safety coverage in their time in the Big Ten because of their run game, and they struggled to do anything for split safety coverage. The Indiana game, you can't really excuse it. It was rough, but I think a guy is –
You're allowed to have a clunker.
Right? Yeah, okay, sorry, he can't play every game at the perfectly high level. I think too many people are nitpicking on that. Blake, so you're kind of on the lone horse here with the Zack Wilson. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything more to add here? Or
I did have a question for you guys. So where do you think the Niners would have to trade up to get Fields? Because in my eyes, obviously not top 2. I don't think the Dolphins will go quarterback. The Falcons restructured Matt Ryan, pushing more cap to future years, so it doesn't make logical sense that they would obviously just get a quarterback and then cut him and have a bunch of dead cap. 5, the Bengals, they have Burrow. Where do you think they'd have to trade up? Because the Panthers and the Broncos seem like the biggest threats to getting a quarterback, getting the third guy, in my eyes at least. Where do you think, or where would you be comfortable with them trading up for that?
4 to 7 is where I would say, because the Panthers pick at 8. Anything 4 to 7, I think, is a possibility. And I don't think we talked about this actually earlier today, Akash. I don't think the value chart in terms of 4 to 7 is terrible in terms of what they would have to give up.
Yeah. So selfishly, I've kind of rooted for Deshaun Watson to end up in Carolina. I mean, yes, you'd like for Deshaun Watson to come to San Francisco, whatever. I just don't think they have the assets. And I think you just look at David Tepper, aggressive guy in business. He now is extremely aggressive with the Panthers. So I feel like if the whole Watson situation clears up, whatever happens, he's available for trade again by the draft. And if Carolina ends up with Deshaun Watson, all of a sudden I think you could see Justin Fields somewhere in that 4 to 10 range, and maybe even slide to the Niners. My guess is some other team could potentially trade up for him at that spot, but Justin Fields would be the guy that slides, I think, in that scenario. But if the Carolina Panthers don't trade for Watson, then I think the Niners would have to get ahead of Carolina. And you never want to be the team where, say, the Niners trade up to 5, and then the Panthers then leapfrog them and go get Justin Fields. So you want to always trade up to the maximum spot, if that makes sense, which would be 3 in this case. But that won't be determined, I think, at least until the week of the draft, with all these pro days that are still left over the next month. So yeah. But I think somewhere between 3 and 7.
Yeah, and all the go ahead, my bad.
I was gonna say, because if they, let's say that at 8 the Panthers do get Watson or something, or Watson, the Panthers don't need a quarterback for whatever reason, I would be surprised if he slipped past honestly 6 or 7, because there's other teams that like around them. Maybe the Patriots want to get a quarterback, even though they have Cam. There's still definitely a need there. I still think there's teams in that middle round, or not middle round, but like mid of the draft that they could definitely trade up and like leapfrog the Niners. So they would have to trade. Obviously, like they're not going to trade before the draft starts. I think they would trade and then select him at like when the pick is up. But no, it's definitely an interesting thought, like where they would have to go.
Yeah, the only move pre-draft I think would be get to 3, because Jets and Jags are probably quarterback. Mm-hmm. So if something happens pre-draft, it's the Niners getting to 3. I doubt they'd go to like 7 before the draft.
Oh yeah,
the move would be like during the draft, like you mentioned, because okay, what the order is and who's falling and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So secretly, I'm kind of hoping they don't go up to 3, honestly. And just because I'm a little superstitious, so I'm going to put a little superstition out on this video before we end it and maybe take some questions. So typically when quarterbacks go 1-2, I feel like the guy that goes second always fails. Manning, Ryan Leaf, except the only example I can see is Tim Couch, Donovan McNabb, and I'm going to get to that example in a second. But Manning, Ryan Leaf, Luck, RG3, Mariota, Winston, all these guys, it just scares me just because the president feels like one of those 2 guys always fails, and it's usually not the one. And then the other thing is I wanted to say was 1, 2, 3 also scares me. So I'm hoping they don't go Fields at 3, just because the one example that comes to the top of my head, and it's totally different. This has nothing to do with the success of the players, just me being superstitious. I do need to preface my statement with that. But if you're thinking Tim Couch, McNabb, Achilles Smith was a giant bust. Tim Couch was a giant bust. McNabb wasn't. So from that standpoint, quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3 kind of scares me, because this does have a little bit of the 99 draft vibe from it, where there are 5 viable first-round quarterbacks. In that draft, Cade McNown, Dante Culpepper, Donovan McNabb, Achilles Smith, and Tim Couch. So there is a little bit of that going on here. We'll see, but honestly, from that standpoint, and then the point you brought up about Deshaun, I think Dave Tepper, no matter what, I think the Carolina Panthers are going to get their guy this offseason. Whether that guy is Justin Fields, whether that guy is Mack Jones, whether that guy is Deshaun Watson, it's going to happen. Dave Tepper kind of reminds me of when Steve Ballmer came and took over the
Clippers.
Clippers, and he just came in aggressive, had to get Kawhi Leonard in free agency, was ready to spend money on everything. That's what the Panthers feel like at the moment. But that's what I see happening. We'll see what happens, but that's just my little superstition to it. And so, guys, I think we've kind of reached the end. Blake and I will, I guess, stick around for maybe 10 more minutes and take some questions. Akash, I know you have to go. Thank you so much for joining us. It was awesome having you on. We'll definitely try to get you on again soon. Hopefully you have some time for us again. Thank you so much.
Always have time for you guys. Appreciate you for having me. Maybe next time we'll talk more Packers for Blake and less Niners, but always love to be on. Appreciate you guys. And thanks for listening to everyone that's on the YouTube live stream. So appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Take it easy. All right.
So we'll take some questions here. I know there's been a lot of questions coming in throughout. Just send them in now, and we'll try to get to as many as we can in about 10 minutes. The Packers are a disgrace for ruining Rodgers' career. I don't know what else to say for this other than, Blake, how do you feel about it?
All right. So there's like an actual narrative around this that the Packers have lucked into 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks and they've wasted their careers, quote unquote wasted. It's just really hard winning a Super Bowl. Like Dan Marino didn't win one. Breeze has won one. Russell Wilson's won one. It's really hard to win more than one. Tom did it. He also went to he got Bill. They have had really good drafts in the past. It's just hard to win a Super Bowl. That's all I'll say on that.
Yeah, it is. I will say the one thing is that it feels like the Packers have always balked at making that one extra move to totally go all in. That's where I think people will say, well, when you have Aaron Rodgers, when you have Brett Favre, why aren't you going all in? But I think it's kind of a small critique because they have had 20 years of sustained success, but that's where.
And then another thing too is if you look at their win percentage in the last 10 years, like it's top 3, but the expectation is Super Bowl or bust basically, which I mean, if you're a fan and that's all you think about, you're just going to be a sad fan for pretty much all your fandom, because it's really hard to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, agree. And then, Nick, I appreciate you calling me the GOAT. If you guys have any more questions, just put them in. I saw some good questions here. Here's Pinor. This is, I think, a great question. Do you trust the judgment of Kyle Shanahan choosing a quarterback high? Even players like Joe Williams, Pettis, McGlinchey aren't looking too bright. So, Blake, if you don't mind, I'll take this first. Yeah. I trust his judgment. I mean, for every Joe Williams, you have Matt Breida that they picked up as an undrafted free agent who basically replaced that. Dante Pettis, he picked Brandon Ayuk, he picked Deebo Samuel. So I think every guy is going to have draft hits and draft misses. I trust his judgment because I think he knows what he's looking for. And from that standpoint, I think it makes sense because he knows what he wants in terms of his fit for his system. Like, you can see the science or in theory why you draft a player to fit what he's looking for. Unfortunately, the draft is a giant crapshoot. So it's the way it's built is that if you have 50% of success in the draft, you're having a good draft from that standpoint. And so that's just where I'll leave it.
Yeah. I mean, by all accounts, he's insanely smart schematically and just football knowledge wise, that I'm not going to say, no, I don't trust the head coach who by all accounts has taken maybe not the best quarterbacks and made them look a lot better than they truly are. There's graphics showing Nick Mullins' stats are like top 3 in his first 15 starts or whatever. Like, come on now. Like, as much as you want to say Nick Mullins is a good backup and all that, like, that is just ridiculous. And he's made him look a lot better than I think he is. No disrespect to him, but yeah, I mean, I trust Shanahan for sure. And yeah, like, it's impossible to hit on every first rounder. You can look at Bill Belichick's wide receiver history. He drafted Harry. He's had a ton of other busts. But would you not trust Bill Belichick to draft someone? I mean, I would personally. So
even with DBs, he's supposed to know corners. I can't remember all of them, but I do remember that he picked Rossai Dowling 35th overall, and Rossai Dowling was a massive bust. He picked Kaijuan Williams from Vanderbilt, 6'4" corner, was supposed to be like Brandon Browner. I don't think he even plays for them beyond special teams. So, like, Kyle Shanahan's supposed to know wide receivers. Yeah, Pettis is a bust. Belichick's supposed to know corners. I just named Kaijuan Williams and Rossai Dowling off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's a huge crapshoot, and even the best of the best coaches and GMs miss picks all the time. So I trust Shanny to make the right choice.
So Jacob's question here is really similar to JR's question. So we'll kind of just answer both of them. So what is kind of the ceiling for the Niners with the rookie quarterback? If they draft a quarterback, should you still have playoff expectations? Blake, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think you would have playoff. Or actually, sorry. It depends where you draft the quarterback. If this is like a first round dude, yeah, I mean, I really think you're thinking playoffs with this roster. What they did the roster's not as good as 2019, but it's not like completely different. And there are some areas that are just as good, if not even better. Like, you could say the wide receivers are better. You could say the left tackle's better, this, that, and the other. But if they draft a dude in the first round, the expectation is certainly playoffs. And I think they could win 12 games at least if they had a rookie quarterback that came in day one and looked semi-competent or more than competent. If they drafted like Trask in the second or some guy in like the 5th or 6th and he started a lot of games, probably not. But if they drafted a guy in the first round, which is what I think the question's getting at, yeah, I think they'd be a playoff team.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Look, the misnomer is that the Niners put a lot on Jimmy Garoppolo's plate. Now, the question is, can the rookie digest the verbiage of this offense quickly? And I can't answer that question because I don't know the memory retention of any of these quarterbacks. What I do know is that in terms of mentally, the Niners don't put a lot on Jimmy Garoppolo. Everything is defined. Everything is clear. Where he's supposed to go with the football is very defined, and they have an excellent run game, and they make a lot of throws off play action, which means you're sucking up linebackers. The field is clear, and you really have to read one guy and throw the ball. So from that standpoint, mentally, there's not a lot of stress. physically, this quarterback is likely more talented than Jimmy. Now, is the ceiling? No team has ever won the Super Bowl with the rookie quarterback, but I don't see them winning a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo next year. I see them being a playoff team with Jimmy Garoppolo next year, and I could see them being a playoff team with the rookie quarterback next year. Now, if the rookie quarterback busts or has a horrible rookie season, then I guess they messed up with who they take. But if they take the right guy, given that that rookie quarterback is going to be put in maybe the best possible position ever to succeed in terms of Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, a good offensive line, a great run game, and Kyle Shanahan, well, yeah, 100% I expect them to be in the playoffs. Wait, this one is more for you. Are you pissed about the Jordan Love pick?
So I keep changing my mind. I change my mind on this a lot, right? If it just depends on a lot of it depends on Rodgers' contract and what they do here in the future, which I've talked about on the channel previously. So do check that out. That video out. So basically, like at first, I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, I hated it at first, right? And I guess the more I think about it and the more I watch Love, I'm like, all right, this dude, quarterbacks are a lot better when they sit, obviously, right? If they get thrown in the fire day one, they usually don't turn out the best. Now, Love, he's going to sit definitely at least 1 year. He already has probably 2 years. No, he did not suit up. Tim Boyle was the backup. I think he's going to be good. All right. I think he'll be good. And here's the other aspect, and we kind of talked about it earlier. Having a quarterback on a rookie contract is a clear sign of success if he turns out to be good. And I think Love will be good. I think sitting behind 2 years behind Rodgers, LaFleur is a good OC. We have a good offensive team in place. I think he'll be good. And him on a rookie contract, you could make the argument that if he's 80% of what Rodgers is, even 75, 70, like that is better than paying Aaron Rodgers $40 million. Now, do I want them to get rid of Rodgers? Obviously not. Like that's probably maybe my favorite player ever besides Jordy Nelson. But like, it's very it's a tough situation, honestly, is my big point that I'm trying to make. But what are your thoughts on this?
I'm not a Packers fan, but I didn't think the Jordan Love pick was a bad pick. It makes sense, okay? The thought process behind drafting Jordan Love in last year's draft is physically one of the more gifted quarterbacks in the draft. Yeah. Maybe the most gifted quarterback behind Herbert. Maybe more gifted than Burrow. Good feet, can move around, can make all kinds of throws off platform, ridiculous arm. There were just massive consistency issues. Well, when you get a player like that, what are you hoping? He gets to sit, and that's what the Packers are doing. He's going to end up sitting for 2 years. So that's where his development is exactly what you want. Like everybody writes theory, can't start day one, but then they're not willing to let the guy sit and develop. So let's wait and see what he is. In theory, the pick made sense. Now, it's unfortunate. I wish they didn't go the A.J. Dillon route round 2. I wish they didn't go the fullback route. I wish they could. I felt like there were enough receivers, enough interior defensive linemen to address those kinds of issues there later in the draft. But in theory, I don't think the Love pick was terrible. Now, I'm not as high on his ceiling as you just because I didn't love him that much before the draft. But I understand the thought process, and I do think there's a scenario. If there's a scenario where Jordan Love lives up to his talent, which his talent is a top 12, top 10 type quarterback type talent, this is the scenario. Sit for 2 years, great play caller, not great, but very good play caller in LaFleur, and see what happens. He's great.
Yeah. All right. And then on that point too is this roster is one of the better ones in the league. Just regards to offensive talent. Now there is definitely, like, I'm not going to say it's perfect roster, but they have a really good O-line. LaFleur is a good coach. I think the GM's solid. He's had a few home run picks. Their defense isn't completely terrible, and they have a lot of young, promising guys in there. They have the opportunity now if Love does get inserted, okay, we're going to have a little more free cap space to work with. We can shore up those holes, whether that's free agency or trading for a guy and then paying him a massive contract afterwards. That's part of the glory of the rookie contract is if he steps in and he actually is good, you have additional cap space to go out and fill out your roster. A la what the Ravens have been doing with Lamar Jackson, like their defense. They've traded for Peters and they paid him. They signed Thomas. I talked about it a little earlier, but they've made moves. Same with Murray, same with Goff, same with Josh Allen.
Carson Wentz.
Carson. Yeah, a ton of examples. Just look at the quarterbacks drafted that have turned out to be good. Now that it kind of hinges like we've literally never seen this guy play. He hasn't played in a couple of years. We just haven't seen him. So that's the thing. And I mean, hopefully there's preseason so we can get a little taste of what Jordan Love looks like.
That's what I was gonna say. Go ahead.
And I don't want Rodgers to get injured, but if he were, it's not like we have Scott Tolzien back there and we're just completely screwed because there's no way we're winning with that guy. So, yeah, Jordan Love will be interesting to see if he does play in meaningful snaps or even in preseason.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think part of the Jordan Love criticism is that nobody's seen him play yet, and I think the lack of preseason is what's really hurting him. Yeah. And I think if he goes in preseason and he balls out, then people would be like, oh, look, they have Jordan Love behind Aaron Rodgers, Packers are in good shape, blah, 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 blah. The narrative would change just like that. I don't know how you can even form an opinion on the pick yet when the guy's yet to see the field. I think the bigger question would be you would have bigger problems if you're hearing stuff where like the Packers wanted to trade him and all of that. By all accounts, they seem to be okay with him. So let's wait and see how it plays out. So guys, go ahead.
Quickly go on this one more is I definitely understand the frustration with just that draft in general because it honestly didn't make sense. The first round they took a defensive player was the 5th round after just getting ran all over by vicious 49ers. So like it was just puzzling. And then they took a running back, which is one of the least valuable positions. And then Josh DeGuara, who's like the Kyle Juszczyk of our offense. He played a couple games towards ACL. So it is just like tough because that draft made no sense at the time. And it still makes no sense at all to most people. But yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. And so guys, we'll take one more question here. And that's the one from Jamal. I saw a lot of good questions still to come, but we'll get to them. We'll be streaming again probably tomorrow. It'll be more basketball. A couple people have DM'd me asking me to do some more basketball stuff. So we'll do basketball. Hopefully something happens in the trade deadline tomorrow, and we get to talk about that tomorrow. Real quick before Jamal, I saw this, so I thought I would answer it. I haven't played Madden in a few years. I still occasionally play maybe with a couple friends here and there. But for the most part, I haven't really played Madden. I never really got into it, but I could still run Blake in Madden. I know that for sure. And so finally, Jamal is asking, I could say so much with Fields, but I'll wait until I talk to you guys for sure. We got to get you on, Jamal. How do you think we will view these rookie QBs in 4 years?
I think we should wait for this question to see where they do land. Because that is honestly a huge part of a quarterback's development. Like, if you put Josh Allen on those Jets teams, is it fair to say that he might not have turned into what he is? Sure. It definitely is possible. Or if, say, Sam Darnold went to a team that was loaded with talent. Now, I'm not saying, like, Josh Allen was always going to – or he could never have reached his potential, but there is a factor of, like, where you go, the coaches you have, the players around you and all that.
Yep, I think that's the exact thing. I think we can't answer this at the moment. I think we will answer it as soon as we find out. I think that'd be a fun video to do once we find out where all these guys land. I think that's the most important thing because then you can start to look at, well, how do they fit in this system? How they be used within this system? And then start to guess. Yeah, Jamal, I knew you guys wouldn't answer this. Yeah, that's the thing. It just makes no sense to answer it now. I do see, so I can just talk about the ceilings. Like, I do see a scenario where all three, Lawrence, Wilson, and Fields, are capable of being top 7, top 8 quarterbacks in the NFL. I think if you say top 5, there's already 2 spots, I think, that are taken for the next 10 years in Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes.
And Jordan Love at 3.
And Lamar Jackson's on the outskirts of it. So right there, that's what I would say. For the most part, we'll see. But yeah, we will definitely answer this after the draft. Okay, so I think we've kind of reached the end. It was awesome having Akash on. Thank you so much, guys, for sticking with us and staying. We're probably going to stream tomorrow some basketball stuff. Newman, I saw your question. You asked it twice. I think it's a great question, and I don't think it's worth just being answered in a short time now. We will do an entire topic with this question as one of our topics, so stay tuned for that. We'll be on tomorrow, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Please like, share. We appreciate all of your support, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.